The harsh sun beat down on Cole Davidson's face as he urged his horse forward, the vast expanse of the Arizona territory spreading before him like a dusty canvas. It was 1878, and Cole had spent the last decade convincing himself that solitude was the only companion a man needed in this unforgiving land. "Keep moving, Thunder," he muttered to his chestnut stallion, patting the beast's strong neck. "Just you and me, the way it ought to be." The small mining town of Copper Creek appeared on the horizon, a collection of weathered buildings that seemed to grow reluctantly from the parched earth. Cole hadn't planned on stopping, he never did, but his supplies were running low, and Thunder needed rest. He'd drift in, restock, and drift back out, same as always. Copper Creek was like a dozen other frontier towns he'd passed through, a main street lined with the Essentials General Store, saloon, sheriff's office, and a small doctor's office with peeling paint. What Cole hadn't expected was the commotion outside that doctor's office as he rode in. A cluster of townsfolk had gathered, their faces etched with concern. Cole tipped his hat lower, intent on avoiding whatever trouble brewed there. He'd learned long ago that other people's problems had a way of becoming your own, if you weren't careful. "Please, is there anyone who can help?" A man's desperate voice cut through the murmur of the crowd. "My daughter needs to get to Phoenix. Doc Miller says she needs a specialist, or she won't make it." Cole tied Thunder to the hitching post outside the general store, deliberately keeping his back to the scene. Not his concern, not his problem. "I'd take her myself," the man continued, "but my leg's still healing from the mine collapse. I can't manage a 3-day ride." Cole pushed through the bat-wing doors of the general store, the familiar smell of coffee beans, leather, and tobacco greeting him. An elderly shopkeeper looked up from behind the counter, his eyes curious beneath bushy white eyebrows. "Afternoon, stranger," the old man said. "What can I help you with?" "Coffee, beans, jerky, ammunition," Cole replied curtly, "and some grain for my horse." As the shopkeeper gathered his supplies, Cole found himself glancing out the window at the crowd. They had dispersed somewhat, but the desperation on the father's face remained visible even from a distance. "That's Daniel Davies," the shopkeeper said, following Cole's gaze. "Good man, works the copper mine. His daughter Alice took sick about a month ago. Started with a fever, then got worse. Doc's done all he can." "Not my concern," Cole said, placing coins on the counter. The shopkeeper shrugged. "Didn't say it was, just making conversation." Cole gathered his supplies and stepped back into the harsh sunlight. He'd intended to continue straight through town, but found himself hesitating beside Thunder, watching as the man Daniel limped back toward a small house at the edge of town, defeat evident in his slumped shoulders. "Damn it all," Cole muttered, turning Thunder toward the saloon instead. He needed a drink before heading back into the wilderness. The Rusty Nail Saloon was sparsely populated this early in the day. A few miners sat at scattered tables, and a tired-looking woman in a faded red dress leaned against the bar. Cole ordered whiskey, tossing it back in one burning swallow. "You're new," the barkeep observed, already pouring him another. "Passing through?" "Always am," Cole replied. The barkeep nodded toward the window. "Heard about the Davies girl? Shame that. Pretty little thing. Smart, too." Cole remained silent, but the barkeep continued undeterred. "Doc says she's got some kind of lung ailment. Needs a specialist in Phoenix, but her pa can't take her, and no one else can spare the time for a 3-day journey there and back." "There's a stagecoach, isn't there?" Cole asked despite himself. "Next one's not for 2 weeks. Doc says she doesn't have that long." Cole finished his second whiskey and placed the glass firmly on the bar. "Like I said, just passing through." The setting sun cast long shadows as Cole prepared Thunder for departure. He'd wasted too much time in town already. The open country called to him no attachments, no responsibilities, no disappointments. Just the way he preferred it. As he mounted Thunder, he heard a racking cough from a nearby house, Daniel Davies' house. Through the open window, he could see a young woman lying in bed, her face flushed with fever as her father pressed a cool cloth to her forehead. Thunder shifted beneath him, sensing his indecision. "Not our problem, boy," Cole muttered, but made no move to ride away. The image of his sister's face, consumed by fever all those years ago, flashed before him. Emma had been just 16 when influenza took her, while Cole, barely 20 himself, watched helplessly. He'd been unable to save her then. He'd vowed never to be put in that position again, never to care, never to fail. Before he could reconsider, Cole found himself dismounting and walking toward the Davies house. He rapped sharply on the door. Daniel Davies opened it, surprise evident on his weathered face. "Mr. Davies," Cole said stiffly, "I understand your daughter needs transport to Phoenix." Hope flickered in the man's tired eyes. "Yes, sir, she does." "I'm heading that direction," Cole lied. "I could take her?" Daniel's eyes widened. "You'd do that? For strangers?" No, Cole thought. I don't. "I'm going that way regardless," he said aloud. "Please come in," Daniel said, opening the door wider. "I'm Daniel Davies, and you are?" "Cole Davidson." The small house was neat but sparse, the home of a hard-working miner and his daughter. Cole followed Daniel to a small bedroom where the young woman lay beneath a thin quilt. Alice Davies couldn't have been more than 20. Her hair, damp with sweat, was the color of honey, and her face, though flushed with fever, held a delicate beauty that even illness couldn't diminish. As Cole entered, she opened her eyes a startling clear blue despite the fever clouding them. "Alice, this is Mr. Davidson," Daniel said softly. "He's offered to take you to Phoenix to see the specialist." Alice's gaze fixed on Cole, assessing him with surprising clarity for someone so ill. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. A fair question, Cole thought. One he couldn't answer himself. "I'm heading that way," he repeated. She studied him for a moment longer before a coughing fit seized her. When it subsided, she nodded weakly. "Thank you." "We'll leave at first light," Cole said, already regretting his decision. "It's a 3-day ride if we push hard. Pack light." "Mr. Davidson," Daniel said as he walked Cole to the door. "I don't have much, but whatever I have is yours for this kindness." Cole shook his head. "I don't want your money, Mr. Davies. Just have her ready at dawn." As Cole walked back to Thunder, he silently cursed his momentary weakness. 3 days to Phoenix, however long it took for the doctor there to treat her, and 3 days back. A week, maybe more, of responsibility he didn't want, of human connection he'd spent years avoiding. "What have you gotten us into, Thunder?" he murmured, stroking the horse's muzzle. The stallion nickered softly in response. Cole made camp just outside of town, beneath a solitary cottonwood tree. As he stared into his small campfire, he wondered what had possessed him to offer his help. It wasn't like him, not anymore, not since Emma died, since his father drank himself to death, since his mother simply gave up the will to live, not since he'd learned that caring for others only led to pain. Morning came too quickly. Cole packed his meager belongings and rode back into town as the first rays of sunlight crested the distant mountains. Daniel Davies was waiting outside his house, Alice bundled in blankets despite the promise of another scorching day. "She had a rough night," Daniel explained as Cole dismounted. "Fever got worse. I'm grateful you're taking her now, instead of waiting for the stage." Alice looked even more fragile in the harsh morning light, but she attempted a small smile as Cole approached. "I'm ready, Mr. Davidson." Cole nodded curtly. "Call me Cole." He turned to Daniel. "I'll need a second horse. She can't ride double with me for 3 days." "Already arranged," Daniel said, gesturing to a gentle-looking mare tied nearby. "Borrowed from the blacksmith. Her name's Willow." After securing Alice's few belongings and a bedroll to Willow's saddle, Cole faced the challenge of getting the sick woman mounted. She was weaker than she appeared, nearly collapsing as she attempted to stand on her own. Without a word, Cole lifted her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing, burning hot with fever against his chest as he placed her carefully in the saddle. "I can ride," she assured him, though her white-knuckled grip on the saddle horn suggested otherwise. "We'll see," Cole replied skeptically. Daniel embraced his daughter, tears glistening in his eyes. "You get well, Alice. You hear me? I'll be waiting right here for you to come home." "I will, Pa," she promised. Cole mounted Thunder and took Willow's reins. "We'll be back when she's well," he said, surprising himself with the promise. He'd planned to drop her in Phoenix and continue on his way alone, as always. They rode out of Copper Creek slowly, mindful of Alice's condition. Cole kept a watchful eye on her, noting how she swayed slightly in the saddle, how each cough seemed to drain what little strength she possessed. By midday, the sun was merciless. Cole called a halt beneath the shade of a rocky outcropping, helping Alice dismount. She collapsed against him, barely conscious. "Miss Davies," he said, lowering her gently to the ground. "Alice." Her eyes fluttered open. "I'm fine," she whispered. "Just need to rest a moment." Cole unscrewed his canteen and held it to her lips. "Drink." She obeyed, taking small sips. Some color returned to her cheeks, but Cole was concerned by the heat radiating from her body. The fever was getting worse. "We need to keep moving," he said, after allowing her a brief rest. "We have to make more ground before nightfall." Alice nodded determinedly, but when Cole helped her stand, her legs buckled beneath her. Without hesitation, he scooped her into his arms again. "What are you doing?" she protested weakly. "You can't ride alone," Cole said, placing her on Thunder's saddle before mounting behind her. "We'll lead Willow." Cole had avoided physical contact with others for so long that the sensation of Alice's back against his chest was startlingly intimate. He could feel each labored breath she took, each shiver that coursed through her despite the heat. He wrapped one arm securely around her waist, holding her steady as Thunder resumed a gentle pace. They rode in silence for hours, Alice drifting in and out of consciousness against him. By the time the sun began to set, Cole knew they hadn't covered nearly enough ground. At this rate, the journey would take 4 days, maybe 5, time Alice might not have. He found a suitable campsite near a small spring, gently laying Alice on his bedroll while he unsaddled the horses. She stirred as he built a fire, her eyes glassy with fever. "Where are we?" she asked, confusion evident in her voice. "About 20 miles from Copper Creek," Cole replied, kneeling beside her with his canteen. "Drink." She complied, then caught his wrist as he withdrew. Her hand was burning hot against his skin. "Why are you helping me?" Cole didn't answer immediately, busying himself with preparing a simple meal of beans and jerky. Finally, he said, "You needed help. I was there." Alice watched him with those unsettlingly clear blue eyes. "That's not an answer, not really." "It's the only one I have," Cole replied, offering her a plate of food. "You should eat if you can." She managed a few bites before exhaustion overcame her again. As she slept fitfully beside the fire, Cole studied her face. In sleep, the pain lines eased, revealing the young woman beneath the illness, strong features softened by a gentleness that reminded him painfully of Emma. Cole shook away the thought. Getting attached would only complicate matters. He was taking her to Phoenix because it was the right thing to do, nothing more. Once she was in the doctor's care, he'd be on his way again. Alone. The way he preferred it. Morning brought no improvement in Alice's condition. If anything, she seemed worse, her breathing more labored, her skin alternating between burning hot and alarmingly cold. Cole broke camp quickly, once again placing Alice on Thunder and mounting behind her. "We need to make better time today," he told her as they set off. "Try to stay awake if you can." Alice nodded against his chest. "I'll try." After a moment, she added, "Tell me about yourself, Cole. It might help me stay alert." "Not much to tell," he replied shortly. "Everyone has a story," she persisted. "Where are you from? Do you have family?" Cole remained silent so long that Alice thought he wouldn't answer. Finally, he said, "Virginia, originally. No family, not anymore." "I'm sorry," Alice said softly. "Was it the war?" "Some of it." The war had taken his older brother, Thomas, leaving a hole in the family that never healed. Rest of them after. "My mother died when I was 12, Alice offered. "It's been just Pa and me since then." Cole didn't respond, but he found himself listening as Alice continued, her voice weak but determined. "Pa came west to work the mines after Ma passed. Said we needed a fresh start. I was so angry at him for taking me away from everything I knew." She paused, a cough shaking her slight frame. "But he was right. We built something good here." "And now you're sick," Cole observed. Alice gave a small laugh that turned into another cough. "Yes, now I'm sick. Life has a way of taking unexpected turns, doesn't it?" Cole thought of all the unexpected turns his own life had taken: Thomas dying at Gettysburg, Emma succumbing to influenza, his father drowning his grief in whiskey until it killed him, his mother's silent withdrawal until she simply faded away. And now here he was, a man who vowed to need no one, carrying a sick woman across the Arizona territory. Yes, he agreed quietly. It does. They rode through the blistering heat of the day, stopping only briefly to rest the horses and allow Alice to drink. By mid-afternoon, they came upon a small creek, its water a precious resource in the arid landscape. Cole helped Alice dismount, setting her carefully in the shade of a cottonwood tree. He wet his bandana in the cool creek water and pressed it to her forehead, alarmed at how hot her skin felt beneath his hand. "The fever's getting worse," he said, more to himself than to her. Alice's eyes fluttered open. "I'm fine," she insisted weakly. "Just need to rest a moment." Cole snorted. "You're a terrible liar, Miss Davies." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "Alice," she corrected. "And I'm not lying, I'm simply being optimistic." Despite his concern, Cole found himself almost smiling in return. "Optimism won't cool a fever." "No," she agreed, "but it makes bearing it easier." She caught his hand as he went to re-wet the bandana. "Thank you, Cole." "For doing this." Cole nodded uncomfortably, unused to gratitude. "Rest while you can. We'll move on soon." As Alice drifted into an uneasy sleep, Cole took the opportunity to refill their canteens and check the horses. Thunder nudged his shoulder affectionately as he adjusted the saddle. "Don't get used to the company," Cole told the horse quietly. "Once she's in Phoenix, we're back on our own." Thunder snorted as if in disagreement. "Don't you start," Cole muttered. "Bad enough I'm talking to a horse without you talking back." When he returned to Alice, he found her shivering despite the heat. Concern gnawed at him as he knelt beside her. "Alice," he called softly, "we need to keep moving." She didn't respond immediately, and for a heart-stopping moment, Cole feared the worst. Then her eyes opened, confusion clouding the blue depths. "Emma?" she murmured. Cole froze. "No," he said, his voice rough. "It's Cole. Cole Davidson." Alice blinked several times, awareness returning slowly. "Cole," she repeated. "I'm sorry. I don't know what I thought." "The fever's making you confused," Cole explained, helping her sit up. "Can you ride?" Alice nodded determinedly, though Cole doubted her assessment of her own strength. Nevertheless, he helped her to her feet, supporting most of her weight as they walked to the horses. Once again, he placed her on Thunder's back before mounting behind her. As they continued their journey, Alice leaned more heavily against him, her body occasionally trembling with chills, despite the scorching afternoon heat. "Talk to me," Cole urged as her head lolled against his shoulder. "Stay awake." "Alice, what should I talk about?" she asked, her voice faint. "Anything? Tell me about your life in Copper Creek." Alice seemed to rally slightly. "It's a small town, but it's home. I teach at the school." "Did Pa tell you that?" "No," Cole replied, genuinely surprised. "You're the school teacher?" "Yes," she said, pride evident even in her weakened state. "We only have 12 students ranging from 6 to 15, but they're bright children, eager to learn." Cole tried to imagine Alice in a schoolhouse, surrounded by children, her eyes bright with health instead of fever. The image came more easily than he expected. "Do you enjoy teaching?" he asked, realizing he actually wanted to know the answer. "Very much," Alice replied. "There's nothing like seeing a child understand something for the first time." That moment when confusion transforms into comprehension, it's magical. As she spoke about her students, her voice grew stronger, more animated. Cole found himself listening intently, asking questions that kept her talking. He learned that she'd always wanted to be a teacher, that she'd convinced the town council to allocate funds for books, that she dreamed of eventually building a proper schoolhouse to replace the converted storage room they currently used. "What about you?" she asked eventually. "What do you do when you're not rescuing ailing school teachers?" Cole hesitated. "I move around, take work where I can find it, cattle driving mostly." "A cowboy," Alice said, a smile in her voice. "Just like in the dime novels." Cole snorted. "Nothing like those ridiculous stories. Real cowboying is hard. Dirty work." "Then why do it?" she asked. The question caught him off guard. Why did he do it? Because it allowed him to keep moving, to avoid putting down roots, to maintain his solitude. "It suits me," he said finally. No attachments, no one to answer to but myself. Alice was quiet for a moment. That sounds lonely, she finally said, her voice soft. I prefer it that way, Cole replied, more sharply than he intended. Do you? Alice asked. Or is it simply easier than the alternative? Cole didn't answer. They rode in silence until the sun began to sink toward the horizon, painting the desert in shades of orange and red. By the time Cole made camp that night, Alice's condition had deteriorated further. Her breathing was shallow, her skin burning hot to the touch. As he laid her on his bedroll, he felt a surge of helpless frustration. They were making progress, but not quickly enough. Hold on, Alice, he murmured as he bathed her face with cool water. Just hold on. Throughout the night, Cole tended to her, fighting to bring down her fever with cool compresses and small sips of water. Alice drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes speaking clearly, other times lost in feverish hallucinations. During one such episode, she clutched at Cole's hand, her eyes wide with fear. Don't leave me, she pleaded. Please, Ma, don't leave. I'm not leaving, Cole assured her, squeezing her hand. I'm right here. As dawn approached, Alice's fever finally broke, her skin cooling as sweat beaded on her forehead. Cole felt a profound relief as her breathing eased somewhat, but he knew they weren't out of danger yet. The fever would return, and her lungs still rattled ominously with each breath. When Alice woke just after sunrise, she seemed more lucid, though exhaustion was etched deeply in her features. You stayed up all night, she observed, her voice barely audible. Cole shrugged as he offered her water. Couldn't sleep anyway. Liar, Alice said with the ghost of a smile. You were worried about me. Can you eat? Cole asked, ignoring her comment. You need strength for today's ride. Alice managed a few bites of jerky before shaking her head. No more. But I can ride. We need to keep going. Cole studied her face, noting the dark circles beneath her eyes, the pallor of her skin beneath the flush of fever. We'll take it slow, he decided. No, Alice said with surprising firmness. We need to push harder. I heard what you told me last night. The fever will come back. We need to reach Phoenix before it does. Cole was taken aback, both by her determination and by the fact that she had been aware enough to hear him during the night. You need to conserve your strength. What I need, Alice countered, is a doctor. The faster we get to Phoenix, the better. Cole couldn't argue with her logic, though he worried about the toll a harder pace would take on her already weakened body. Still, he helped her mount Thunder, once again taking his place behind her as they set off. They pushed harder that day, stopping only when absolutely necessary. Alice remained conscious, though Cole could feel her weakening as the hours passed, leaning more heavily against him. By mid-afternoon, her skin was hot to the touch again, the fever returning as predicted. We need to stop, Cole said as Alice shivered against him. No, she insisted. Keep going. Cole hesitated, torn between the need to make progress and concern for her deteriorating condition. 1 more hour, he compromised. Then we rest. That hour stretched into 2 as Cole searched for suitable shelter. The landscape had changed, becoming more rugged, with rocky outcroppings and sparse vegetation. When he finally spotted a small canyon that would provide shade and protection, Alice was barely conscious. Cole made camp quickly, focusing on making Alice comfortable before tending to the horses. As he bathed her face with cool water, he found himself speaking softly to her, words of encouragement he hadn't planned to offer. You're strong, Alice, stronger than this fever. Just keep fighting. Her eyes fluttered open, fever bright but clear. Why do you care? She asked, echoing his question from days earlier. You said you prefer being alone, no attachments. Cole looked away, uncomfortable with the question and with the answer forming in his mind. Rest, he said instead. We have another hard day tomorrow. But Alice wasn't deterred. Her hand found his, her touch light but insistent. Cole, she pressed. Why are you doing this? Really? Cole stared into the small fire he'd built, watching the flames dance. I had a sister, he finally said, the words feeling rusty, unused. Emma? She was 16 when she got sick. Fever, like yours. I couldn't save her. Alice's hand tightened on his. I'm sorry. Cole nodded, unable to say more. He'd never spoken of Emma to anyone. Not in all the years since her death. The pain of losing her, of watching helplessly as she slipped away, had driven him to his solitary existence. Better to need no one than to lose everyone. She must have been wonderful, Alice said softly, for you to remember her so strongly after all this time. She was, Cole agreed, surprised at how easily the words came now. Bright, stubborn, always ready to argue with me. Like me? Alice asked, a small smile playing at her lips despite her fever. Cole found himself smiling back, a rusty, unpracticed expression. A bit. She wanted to be a teacher too, actually. They talked long into the night, Cole sharing stories of Emma, of his childhood in Virginia, of the war that had taken his brother and broken his family. Alice listened, occasionally offering stories of her own, of her mother's gentle wisdom, of her father's unwavering support, of her dreams for the future of Copper Creek. As Alice finally drifted into sleep, Cole realized with a start that he'd spoken more in the past 3 days than he had in years. More surprisingly, he found he didn't regret it. The night brought another battle against Alice's fever, which rose alarmingly as the hours passed. Cole worked tirelessly, bathing her face and neck with cool water, urging her to drink when she was conscious enough to swallow. By dawn, he was exhausted, but relieved to see the fever had abated somewhat. Alice woke as the first light of day filtered into their small camp. She looked at Cole with clear eyes, though exhaustion was evident in every line of her face. You look terrible, she observed, her voice weak but teasing. Cole ran a hand over his stubbled face. You're one to talk. Alice attempted to sit up, wincing as the movement triggered a coughing fit. Cole supported her until it passed, concern deepening as he noticed the flecks of blood on her lips. We need to get moving, he said, his decision made. Phoenix is still a day's ride away, but I know of a trading post about 4 hours from here. They might have medicine that can help until we reach the doctor. Alice nodded, too weak to argue. As Cole helped her to her feet, she swayed dangerously, her legs buckling beneath her. Without hesitation, Cole lifted her into his arms. I can walk, she protested feebly. Save your strength, Cole replied, carrying her to Thunder. The journey to the trading post was grueling. Alice's condition continued to deteriorate, her breathing becoming more labored with each passing hour. Cole pushed Thunder harder than he would have liked, mindful of the precious burden he carried. When the trading post finally came into view, a squat adobe building with a corral and a few outbuildings, Cole nearly sighed with relief. He dismounted carefully, cradling Alice in his arms as he approached the building. The trading post was run by an older man named Hank Miller, who took one look at Alice and ushered them inside. His wife Martha, a stern-faced woman with kind eyes, immediately took charge. Pneumonia, by the sound of it, she declared after listening to Alice's chest. I've got some medicine that might help, but she needs real doctoring. Cole watched anxiously as Martha mixed a concoction of herbs and powders, which she then helped Alice drink. This will ease the fever and help her breathing, Martha explained to Cole, but it's temporary. How far are you from a doctor? Phoenix, Cole replied. About a day's ride still. Martha nodded gravely. She can rest here for a few hours, but no longer. She needs more help than I can give. Cole thanked the couple, who refused his offer of payment. While Alice rested on a small cot in a back room, Cole took the opportunity to restock their supplies and rest the horses. Your wife is very ill, Hank observed as he helped Cole fill their canteens. Cole didn't correct the assumption. Yes, she is. You're doing right by her, getting her to a doctor, Hank continued. Many men wouldn't bother. Cole thought of Daniel Davies, desperate to help his daughter, but physically unable to make the journey. Her father would have, he said. If he could. Hank raised an eyebrow, but didn't comment further. By mid-afternoon, Cole knew they had to continue their journey. Martha's medicine had helped Alice was more alert, her breathing less labored, but he could tell the improvement was temporary. Thank you for your kindness, Alice told Martha, as Cole prepared to carry her back to Thunder. You get well, child, Martha replied, squeezing Alice's hand. And you, she added, turning to Cole, take care of her. Cole nodded, accepting the responsibility without hesitation. As he carried Alice outside, she looked up at him with clear eyes. You didn't correct them, she observed. When they thought I was your wife. Cole felt heat rise to his face that had nothing to do with the Arizona sun. Seems simpler, he muttered. Alice smiled faintly but said nothing more, as Cole helped her mount Thunder before taking his place behind her. They rode through the afternoon and into the evening, Cole pushing their pace as much as he dared. Alice's condition seemed stable for now, thanks to Martha's medicine, but he could feel the fever slowly returning as the hours passed. As night fell, Cole faced a difficult decision. Stop and rest, or continue through the darkness toward Phoenix. The trail ahead was relatively clear, and the moon was nearly full, providing enough light to see by. We'll keep going, he decided, feeling Alice nod weakly against his chest. The night landscape transformed around them, shadows deepening, the desert coming alive with nocturnal creatures. Cole kept Thunder at a steady pace, alert for any dangers that might lurk in the darkness. Alice drifted in and out of consciousness against him, occasionally murmuring words he couldn't catch. As the hours passed, her fever rose again, her body alternating between burning hot and shivering with chills. Stay with me, Alice, Cole urged as she trembled against him. Phoenix isn't far now. Cole, she whispered, her voice so faint he had to bend his head to hear her. If I don't make it, don't, he interrupted sharply. Don't talk like that. You're going to be fine. Alice weakly lifted a hand to touch his arm. Listen to me. If I don't make it, tell my father I love him. Tell him not to blame himself. Cole's arms tightened around her. You can tell him yourself. You're going to get through this, Alice. She fell silent, either accepting his words or too weak to argue further. Cole pushed Thunder a little harder, fear gnawing at him as he felt Alice growing limper in his arms. Dawn was breaking when they finally reached the outskirts of Phoenix. The town was larger than Copper Creek, with proper streets and substantial buildings. Cole rode directly to the doctor's office, indicated by a weathered sign on a 2-story building near the center of town. Despite the early hour, Cole pounded on the door, Alice unconscious in his arms. After what seemed an eternity, a middle-aged man with rumpled hair and sleep-creased face appeared. What's the meaning of... the doctor began, but stopped short when he saw Alice. Bring her in, he said immediately, professional instinct taking over. Cole followed the doctor into a clean, simple examination room, gently laying Alice on the table. He explained her symptoms and the progression of her illness as the doctor examined her. Pneumonia and a severe case, the doctor confirmed grimly. You did right to bring her here, a day later, and it might have been too late. Cole felt a rush of relief, quickly tempered by the doctor's next words. She's not out of danger yet. The next 24 hours will be critical. The doctor, Dr. Thomas Crawford, worked efficiently, mixing medicines and preparing poultices for Alice's chest. Cole hovered nearby, unwilling to leave her side even as exhaustion pulled at him. You look dead on your feet, Dr. Crawford observed as he administered medicine to Alice. When's the last time you slept? Cole couldn't remember, days ago perhaps. I'm fine, the doctor snorted. You're no good to your wife if you collapse from exhaustion. There's a boarding house across the street. Get some rest. I'll send for you if there's any change. Once again, Cole didn't correct the assumption that Alice was his wife. He hesitated, reluctant to leave her, but the doctor's stern look convinced him. 2 hours, Cole compromised. Then I'm coming back. Dr. Crawford nodded, turning his attention back to Alice. Cole secured rooms at the boarding house, but found sleep elusive despite his exhaustion. After just an hour, he returned to the doctor's office, where he found Alice had been moved to a recovery room. She was still unconscious, her face pale against the white pillows, but her breathing seemed less labored. The medicine is helping, Dr. Crawford informed him, as Cole took a seat beside Alice's bed. But she's still very weak. The infection in her lungs is severe. Cole nodded, settling in for what he knew might be a long vigil. I'm not leaving her. Dr. Crawford studied him thoughtfully. How long have you been married? Cole hesitated. We're not, he finally admitted. She's the daughter of a man in Copper Creek. I'm just helping her get treatment. The doctor raised his eyebrows, but didn't comment further. Well, whoever she is to you, you've saved her life by getting her here. Now we wait and see if she's strong enough to fight this infection. The waiting was harder than the journey had been. Cole remained at Alice's bedside throughout the day and into the night, leaving only when Dr. Crawford insisted he eat or rest. He bathed Alice's face when the fever rose, held her hand when she stirred restlessly, spoke softly to her, even though he wasn't sure she could hear him. On the second day, Alice's fever finally broke. Cole was dozing in the chair beside her bed when he felt a light touch on his hand. He opened his eyes to find Alice watching him, her blue eyes clear for the first time in days. "You're still here?" she whispered, her voice hoarse but stronger than it had been. Relief flooded through Cole. "I said I would be." Alice smiled weakly. "You did, but I thought, once you got me to the doctor—" "I couldn't leave," Cole admitted, the words surprising him even as he spoke them. "I needed to know you were going to be all right." Alice's fingers curled around his. "Thank you, Cole, for everything." Dr. Crawford pronounced Alice's improvement remarkable, but cautioned that her recovery would be slow. "The infection is receding, but her lungs are still weak. She'll need several weeks of rest before she's strong enough to travel." Cole sent a telegram to Daniel Davies, informing him that Alice had reached Phoenix and was receiving treatment. The reply came quickly, relief and gratitude evident even in the sparse wording of the telegram. As the days passed, Alice grew stronger. She was able to sit up, then to walk short distances with Cole's support. They spent hours talking, learning each other's stories, discovering shared interests and good-natured disagreements. Cole found himself telling Alice things he'd never shared with anyone about his dreams before the war, about his guilt over not being able to save his family, about the loneliness he'd refused to acknowledge during his years of wandering. "You built walls to protect yourself," Alice observed one afternoon as they sat in the small garden behind Dr. Crawford's office. "After losing so much, it must have seemed safer not to care about anyone." Cole nodded, surprised at how easily she understood him. "It was." "And now?" Alice asked, her blue eyes searching his face. Cole looked at their hands, somehow entwined without his conscious decision. "Now, I'm not so sure." 2 weeks after their arrival in Phoenix, Dr. Crawford declared Alice well enough to begin planning their return journey to Copper Creek. "Not on horseback," he cautioned. "She's still too weak for that. The stagecoach would be best." As they made preparations for the journey home, Cole found himself increasingly reluctant to think about what would happen afterward. He had no reason to stay in Copper Creek, no reason except— "What will you do?" Alice asked the night before they were scheduled to depart. "After you get me home?" They were sitting on the porch of the boarding house, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink. Cole had been asking himself the same question. "I don't know," he admitted. "Keep moving, I suppose. It's what I've always done." Alice was quiet for a long moment. "You could stay," she finally said, her voice soft. "In Copper Creek." Cole looked at her, at the hope in her eyes, and felt something shift inside him, walls crumbling that he'd spent years building. "What would I do in Copper Creek?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion he couldn't quite name. Alice's hand found his. "Live," she said simply. "Not just survive. Actually live." The stagecoach journey back to Copper Creek was considerably more comfortable than their desperate ride to Phoenix had been. Alice was still weak, but improving daily. Cole found himself watching her constantly, memorizing the way sunlight caught in her honey-colored hair, the sound of her laugh, the thoughtful expression she wore when considering a question. When they arrived in Copper Creek, the entire town seemed to have turned out to welcome them. Daniel Davies hobbled forward, tears streaming unashamedly down his weathered face as he embraced his daughter. "You brought her back," he said to Cole, gripping his hand firmly. "I can never repay you for that." Cole felt uncomfortable with the town's gratitude. He hadn't set out to be a hero, he'd simply been unable to turn away from someone in need. Unable to turn away from Alice, if he was honest with himself. In the days that followed, Cole found reasons to linger in Copper Creek. He helped repair the roof of the schoolhouse, assisted Daniel with chores he couldn't manage with his injured leg, spent evenings sitting on the Davies porch talking with Alice as the stars appeared overhead. A week stretched into 2, then a month. Cole took a job at the livery stable, working with horses that suited his quiet nature. He found himself becoming part of the community, almost without realizing it, having coffee with the storekeeper, playing cards with the miners on Saturday nights, attending Sunday services beside Alice. One evening, as summer gave way to autumn, Cole and Alice walked along the creek that gave the town its name. The cottonwood trees were beginning to turn golden, a few early leaves drifting lazily to the ground around them. "You're still here," Alice observed, echoing her words from the sick room in Phoenix. Cole nodded, suddenly nervous. "I've been thinking about what you said, about living, not just surviving." Alice looked up at him, hope shining in her eyes. "And?" Cole took her hands in his, marveling at how natural it felt now to touch her, to be close to her. "I've spent 10 years telling myself I didn't need anyone, that being alone was safer, easier. And now," Alice prompted softly when he paused. "Now I know I was wrong," Cole admitted. "I didn't start living again until I met you, Alice, until you made me care enough to stay." Alice's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "I'm glad you stayed, Cole Davidson." "I want to keep staying," Cole said, his voice rough with emotion. "If you'll have me." Alice's answer was to rise on tiptoe and press her lips gently to his. Cole pulled her closer, pouring 10 years of loneliness and newfound hope into the kiss. When they finally parted, Cole rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Alice Davies. I think I have since that first day, when you looked at me with those blue eyes and asked me why I was helping you." Alice laughed softly, joyfully. "I love you too, my stubborn cowboy. Even when you were pretending you didn't care, I knew there was a good heart behind those walls." They were married that December in the small church in Copper Creek. The entire town attended, celebrating not just the union of the schoolteacher and the formerly solitary cowboy, but Alice's full recovery as well. Daniel Davies, his leg finally healed, proudly walked his daughter down the aisle. As he placed Alice's hand in Cole's, he murmured, "You found more than you were looking for when you rode into our town, son." Cole couldn't disagree. He'd ridden into Copper Creek convinced that he needed no one, that solitude was his natural state. He'd intended to pass through as he always did, leaving no mark and forming no attachments. Instead, he'd found Alice brave, stubborn, compassionate Alice, who had somehow slipped past his defenses when she was at her most vulnerable. In trying to save her life, he'd saved his own heart from the prison of isolation he'd built around it. 5 years later, Cole stood on the porch of their home, watching as Alice taught their 3-year-old daughter, Emma, to identify wildflowers in their garden. His son, Thomas, just a year old, slept peacefully in his arms. Cole had once believed that caring for others only led to pain, that attachments were weaknesses to be avoided at all costs. Looking at his family now, at the life he'd built with Alice in Copper Creek, he knew how wrong he'd been. He had needed someone after all. He had needed Alice, with her clear blue eyes and her unflinching courage. He had needed her to show him that a life without connections wasn't really living at all. And when she had needed him most, when illness had nearly claimed her, he had discovered that he couldn't leave. Not then, not ever. In saving her, he had found himself. In loving her, he had finally come home.